Good evening, everybody. Myself, Dr. Vikram Lotwala from Surat. Today, I've got the honor to introduce today's speaker in our Oftal online course. So, the speaker is a very well-known person. He says, "Money is terrible master, but an excellent servant." So today we have Anand Bhai, Mr. Anand Doctor, who's from Mumbai, and he's a senior professional in finance who has been working with last 2 decades with IIFL, Motilal Oswal, Citibank, Kotak Mahindra Bank, and now he started his own firm. He's a BCom, MBA, and a certified financial planner, and he is a family financial doctor and financial freedom coach, and specializes in retirement planning, on which he's going to speak today. So over to you, Mr. Anand Doctor.
Thank
Hi,
you, Dr.
good evening,
Vikram.
everyone. And the way I understand it, we have a mixed house. So we have people who are in their maybe 30s, 40s, and we also have people who are already in their so-called retirement age, which is 60s, 70s. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Little louder, Dr.
Okay. So I was saying we have a mixed house so that we have people who are in the early age brackets where retirement is still far away. And then there are people who are already at the so-called retirement age as well, right? So what I'll be doing is today I'll be covering both stages. One is how to prepare for it, and second is how to optimize it after you're retired. Right? Sounds fair?
Yes, sir. You are
Yes, sir.
sounding.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so first of all, why do we even need to look at retirement planning, right? Very basic question. And frankly, 1 or 2 generations back, people did not have any concept of retirement planning. There was no need for retirement planning. We have it today because things have changed. So what are these reasons that have changed in our lives? And therefore, we need to look at this in a very serious way. One is longevity. So earlier, when people, set a retirement age of 60, it was based on the statistics that a person would typically have a lifespan of about 65 years. And therefore, there was the post-retirement period was only 5 years. Today, as we know, the longevity has gone much, much higher, to a large extent due to advancements in medicine and competent doctors like you who are now available to us. So one where one would have ceased to exist for a lot of those diseases, now people are able to continue living maybe with some medical assistance, but they are able to live for another decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, even 4 decades. So longevity has really gone up and is expected to go up further. Second is, as we go from a poor nation to a developing nation to a developed nation, the cost of living keeps going up because we want to go for higher and higher standard of living. As we get to enjoy more and more better things available to us, we also end up paying a lot more than what our parents' generation did. Last but not the least, 2 generations back, it was a given that your children would take care of you once you retire. If they did not, they were called bad children or they were exceptional. Today, it is the reverse. If in your retirement you are dependent on your children, that is something where the children may or may not be capable or to look after you themselves and their children. B, they may not be living with you anymore, may not even be in the same country. C, they may not be willing in certain cases, even if they are capable. And D, even if they are capable and willing, most of us today don't want to be dependent on our children, right? So you want your financial independence, and Therefore, to achieve and maintain that independence, you need to do a lot of planning, and you need to do it as soon as possible so that you have enough time span to make sure that the plan is achieved. So while not everybody retires at 60, I've taken 60 as the starting age bracket, um, and taken this as the beginning of the retirement age, uh, just to put things in perspective. Now, if you remember 2 generations back, retirement means time to remember God, time to do Tirth Yatra, time to do, basically withdraw from active life and go more towards spiritual life, and hand over the reins basically to the next generation in terms of an active life. That no longer applies. So a lot of us, if not all of us, want to have a very nice, active, retired life. So even in our 60s and 70s, in fact, that's the time finally you're free of your obligations. You are, your children have grown up, all their education and other expenses are paid for, they are independent. You have time to spend with your spouse, you have time to spend with yourself, with your hobbies, and you're still physically fit enough and mentally fit enough to actually go out and enjoy life. And that's what we see more and more people doing today. Nobody wants to just sit at home and not do anything and just, doing only puja part. And people travel a lot, people pursue their hobbies, pursue even physical fitness. Um, so all kinds of things, but it's a very active life. As long as the body and mind permit, people want to have an active life. Now, that active life also means that you're spending money, right? So if it's not a simple home life, and you're going to enjoy yourself, obviously, apart from your basic expenses, this kind of a lifestyle also comes with its own expenses. And these are regular expenses because it's part of your lifestyle. It's not just something that you do once in a blue moon. And therefore, you have to plan for all those extra expenses. People assume that in retirement, expenses will only go down. But there are also a lot of new expenses that get added. And therefore, you need to plan properly and visualize what that life is going to be. And then accordingly put it down in terms of figures as to what the cost of that lifestyle is going to be, and accordingly plan from today. Now, this is stage one. Most people have a decent amount of fitness at this level. Coming to stage two, now, as I said, life expectancy is rising a lot. In fact, a lot of us who are in this session today will probably live past 80. Some of us maybe past 90, and some may even cross 100. Right? So the blessings that our grandparents used to live 100 years, they used to be theoretical. Today, it is becoming practically possible to do that. And in Japan, Scandinavia, and many other spots in the world, you have not just a few exceptional people, but people who are centenarians in thousands. Okay, so you have thousands of people. For example, Okinawa in Japan has more than 5,000 people who are over 100 years old. So, with better medical care and better self care and better awareness, it is definitely possible that we live much longer lives. At the same time, this beautiful healthcare comes at a very, very steep cost. So all the advances in medical care, which are now available, world-class medical care is available in India as well. But if you see the inflation in medical costs over the last 10, 15 years, it has been in the range of 13 to 16 years, 16% per annum. And if you take a round figure of 15%, that means what used to cost 100 5 years ago is costing 200 today, and will cost 400 5 years from now. So this is a tremendously steep inflation, extremely high rise in cost of medical care. And since this is a stage in life where, while we may, stay alive for a much longer period, it is typically with a lot of medical assistance, and therefore this becomes a very large part of our regular expenses. It's not just once in a while that, okay, there is some surgery, and therefore it was an exceptional expense. It becomes a part of our regular life, whether it's checkups, it's medicines, medical consultations, maybe assistance in terms of manpower required at home. Um these are all very, very regular lifestyle expenses which become part of life in this stage. And both medical as well as human help, the cost of both of these are rising very, very fast. And therefore, you need to account for this and have substantial corpus available at this age, so that you are able to live a life to your standards, to the best of your physical and mental capacity, without worrying about money running out. Now, a lot of times when I meet doctors or any other professional for that matter, whether it's lawyers or even finance professionals like myself, we always say, like the lawyers say, okay, my dream is to die arguing a case in the courtroom. I would just like to collapse there. I would work till my last breath, my last day. I would be in my working shoes when I die. Doctors also, a lot of doctors, in fact, because of the long gestation period where because of the long education and training, doctors start making real money much later in life than other professionals do. And therefore, many times doctors feel that 50s, 60s, even 70s, these are in fact the golden years where you are able to achieve the maximum professional success, where you have achieved a great amount of reputation, you have a lot of loyal client, patients, where you have a lot of referrals happening. And if you're physically, mentally fit, then this is also financially when you get paid the highest because of your brilliant long years of experience and knowledge that you've gained, right? Uh, and which is all fine. If some of you want to do that and you plan on being fully active till your last day, that's great, nothing wrong with that. But you have to recognize the fact that life does not always go as per our plans, and there can be n number of things that may happen. There might be requirements within your family or your spouse, which may take you away from your profession. There might be your own physical fitness, mental fitness, or changes in the profession which may make it difficult for you to continue working full time. You may end up working part time or at a reduced capacity, or you may end up ceasing to work completely, even though it is not your choice. Because of external factors, you may end up needing to do that. So, while it's great to, have a goal to continue working, you don't want to be dependent on the income that you would generate at this stage. And you want to make sure that at least for financial reasons, you don't need to continue working. So if you want to continue working even in your 60s, 70s, 80s, with your fitness permitting you to do that, great. But it has to be a choice, not out of necessity, right? Because like I explained in the previous slides, expenses will keep moving up, but those expenses should not force you to continue working. I know people who are tired, they don't want to continue working full time, but just because of financial reasons, they continue, going on and on and on, and they are not able to take a real break or take a step back from their careers, or reduce their working hours, and end up working in a very stressful situation, which their bodies and minds are no longer ready to, bear. And it causes not just mental anguish, it also results in poor health, and starts affecting people physically. So while it's great to make a choice to continue working if you're fit, it has to be a choice, it cannot be out of necessity. And to make sure that it's a choice, you have to plan very well in advance, so that finances don't compel you to do that. So when the session was, planned, the title that was given was retirement planning. And I asked her to, change it and put a slash and put also, achieving financial freedom. Because what I just talked about is not retirement, it's financial freedom. Now, today, you might have seen people, especially people with, who are founders of successful startups. Also, there are doctors who have done very, very well at a young age. And so there are people who in their 40s or 50s have achieved, the kind of finances that a lot of people dream of even in 70s. So when you accumulate enough corpus to meet all of your expenses for the rest of your life, you have already achieved your financial freedom. Now, whether you continue working or not is your choice. And therefore, I prefer the term financial freedom to retirement, because retirement is something that primarily is forced on you. Whereas financial freedom is something that you achieve. And then you choose how you want to continue living your life. Working full time, part time, maybe changing the way you work, maybe even going for further learning, even in 60s, and giving a different direction to your life. And therefore, the goal for me is not just achieving a secure retirement, but having the financial freedom that even if I want to make changes in my life, or even if there are external factors that cause changes in my life or my family's life, my finances are in good enough order that I can meet all of those challenges, and even with the changes in life, I can continue to have a stress-free financial life, and I can live my life the way I want. And according to me, this is the actual goal that all of us should have from the day we start working. The sooner we can achieve it, the better. But definitely, we have to achieve it by the time our minds and bodies are reaching a place where we want the choice to cut back on work, and no longer have to continue having to work because we are not financially free. Right? Any questions so far? Because these are the absolute basic foundations on which today's presentation is. So if there are any questions on these basic concepts, I would like to take them right now. No questions? Okay, so either everyone understood everything or nothing. Okay, so carrying on. Before we get into how to plan for your financial freedom or your retirement, let's look at some very basic financial hygiene factors, because all health, including financial health, depends on hygiene. So in terms of financial hygiene, what are some basic things? And this is a checklist that you can use if you don't already have these things in place. These are the immediate to-do things, that you can start implementing right from today. One is have a contingency fund to meet any uncertainties in life, any breaks in earnings, any major expenses that might come up. And COVID was a very good example where a lot of people understood the importance of having this when they suddenly lost their jobs, or they could not continue their professions because they were locked in a place, or they were not able to meet people and conduct their business, and their earnings just paused. Apart from that, at the same time, there were a lot of expenses also which were unexpected. So different situations can happen, and therefore, apart from your regular earnings, you need to have a decent contingency fund. Typically, it's a 6 to 12 months of earnings is a good benchmark for having a contingency fund. If you have any loans, then at least 12 months of EMI should also be added to this figure. Then life insurance. Now, this is not the typical endowment policies that your LIC agent gives you. When I say life insurance, I mean term life insurance, where you get nothing back if you survive the policy. It is at a cost. It's not an investment. It's a small cost that you incur to make sure that if you have any dependence in your life, financial dependence, or if you have any liabilities, then these are taken care of in case something happens to you and you are no longer there to service these expenses with your income, right? Uh, Health insurance is not just for the earning members, but for every member of the family. Being doctors, you all understand that illness can happen at any age to anyone, and the problem there is the higher you go in the age, and the more illnesses you contract, especially lifestyle illnesses, and the more you need insurance, the less available it is going to be. For many people in the 60s and 70s, insurance is not available at all, right? So the idea is to get insurance as early as possible. Also, like I said, because of medical inflation, the costs spiral and they go up very, very fast. And in a period of 10 to 20 years, what costs 100 today could cost 500 or even 1000 20 years down the line. So don't buy insurance that you need today. Buy insurance that you will need 10 to 20 years down the line. And this is especially applicable if you're already in your 50s or 60s, because going ahead, there is very, very high chance that you will not be able to buy the insurance that you want. Now, this applies to my own parents. I was not able to get them the kind of insurance that they needed because I learned about insurance very late in life. I was primarily focused on investments. I got into this profession because of my interest in investments. I've been investing since I was a teenager, but insurance is something I learned about a lot later. So today, I personally have a 50 lakhs health insurance policy, another policy for my wife and my daughter. And these are individual policies, not even floaters. So 50 lakhs individual cover for me, 50 lakhs for her. And I plan to increase it to 1 crore in the next 2 to 3 years. Definitely, I don't need such high amounts today. But if tomorrow I have illnesses that I contract and I don't have the ability to get new insurance, I want to be ready for the insurance that I need 20 years from now, which is why I'm gunning for such high insurance amounts. The good news is the higher amounts beyond 10 lakhs are extremely friendly to the pocket. They don't cost much today. Accident disability insurance is something you can look at for earning members of the family. Critical illness for all members. Professional indemnity insurance, of course, for any uh, medical, practice related cases that might come against you. Last but not the least, wills and succession planning is something that everyone must look at. Especially if you own any real estate assets, you definitely should have a will, whether you're 20 or you're 70. It's not just something that you do after 60 or 70. Anyone who owns any real estate or has children must create a will to make sure that you document very clearly who your assets will go to, and also what most people miss, who will take care of your minor children. Of course, your whatever holdings you have should be held jointly and with nominations which are in sync with your will. So this is the basic checklist. If you don't have any of these in place, you should look at it immediately before even engaging into any long-term financial planning, whether it's for your retirement or your children's education or any other long-term goals. This is the absolute basic hygiene checklist. Okay. So now coming back to your long-term savings and investments, why, when we are earning, do we even look at, savings and investing? The reason is very simple. Our expenses start from the day we are born. At that time, we are essentially using the savings and investments of our parents. Then comes a stage where we start earning. Then comes a stage where the earnings keep going up and expenses also go up. And then finally comes a stage where either you retire or you reduce your working hours, and your expenses can be higher than your income. In between, of course, there are large expenses like wedding, higher education, etc., which also require this. But for today's session, let's focus on the last part, the last portion of this graph, where there is a very, very long period, sometimes 10, 20, 30, or even 40 years, where you're no longer earning or earning very little, but your expenses continue, and they may not even go down. In this graph, expenses are also shown going down, but like we discussed earlier, in today's day and age, the expenses may continue just rising, they may not go up. I mean, they may not go down. And therefore, accumulation becomes very, very important. Right now, there are different so one is this time gap, but even if you are saving regularly and you're accumulating your corpus, there is one disease, which a kind of a cancer which eats away into your savings and leaves you with very little corpus. And that disease is inflation. Now, everyone has heard about inflation. We all know that when costs of things go up, we call it inflation, and government comes up with a figure every year. And we know that prices of things generally tend to keep going up every year. But we underestimate the power of inflation and how big a hole it can make in our savings. So just to give you an example, now this is an example of milk, but it will apply to any household expense that you have. With the same amount of money, let's say you retire, and in year one, you have 100 rupees coming to you, how much you are able to buy. In the year two, year three, year four, year five, if you have a constant income in retirement, so let's say if all your investments are in fixed deposits and there is a fixed interest rate that you're getting, while your income is constant and it's fixed, your expenses keep going up, and therefore you are able to buy lesser and lesser and lesser of the things that you need to buy. And this is the power of inflation. Now, to give you, especially for the younger people, um, a decent idea of the crazy amount of compounding that happens over a longer period of time. So someone who is spending, let's say, 10 lakhs per annum in their 30s, they will need 20 lakhs per annum in their 40s, almost 40 in their 50s, 76 in their 60s, by 70s, and let's look at 80s. And this is for the same things. I'm not even accounting for lifestyle changes, new expenses coming up. This is just buying the same things. If you're in your 30s or 40s, look at how much money you'll need for just having the same lifestyle, buying the same things when you're in your 80s and 90s. And while when you are in 30s, 40s, 80s, 90s seem very far away, you may even question, will I even reach there? The problem is, if you do reach there, what options do you have left now to suddenly generate that income to meet these kind of expenses? And this is basic inflation. I'm not even counting lifestyle inflation, whereby your standard of living goes up or your new expense requirements come up, expenses that are not even there today, and they come up because of physical requirements or different lifestyle changes that happen. Right? And this is with the basic rate of inflation, which we've already seen over the last 50, 60 years in our country. So please do not underestimate how crazily your amount of expenses will go up. And if you have any doubts here, just take any household item that you buy every month today and consider the cost that your parents used to pay for that. And that will give you the same kind of multiple and give you proof that yes, the increase is this high. So now, if you have a disease, there must be treatments, medicines for that, right? So what are the different options to save and invest money? Basic options: fixed deposits, recurring deposits, PPF, NSC, other post office schemes, swap swing schemes, gold, real estate. These are especially favorites of Indians: fixed deposits, gold, and real estate. Uh, then you have equity shares, you have mutual funds. You also have more options today called NPS. You have senior citizen saving schemes, Vai Bandhana Yojana. So a lot more options that are available. The question is, what makes sense for you? Now, the answer to this question is different for everyone. But let's get a basic idea of some of these to understand the differences between them. While returns keep changing in different periods, here we have a chart of returns from 1981 to 22, which is a pretty long period. Even if someone lives, 80, 90 years, this is practically half their lifetime. So I think it's a decent enough period for us to understand. Now, you don't need to look at all of these figures, and I understand they are small in size. Basically, if you just look at the last column, and I'll speak out these figures to give you the idea. Now, inflation has been, and this is basic inflation based on government figures, 6.36%. The return from gold has been 8.26% per annum. Silver, 6.75%. Fixed deposits, 8.4%. PPF, 9.17%. Of course, it's gone on a lot now. And equity, which is represented by Sensex, is 13.35%. Future, as you can see, the potential to really beat inflation and create a sizable corpus has been shown maximum by equities. Now, this does not mean that you put 100% of all your money into equity, but certainly it is something to look at as being part of your overall asset allocation. Now, over such a long period of time, if equity has proven to be such a good option, why is it that most people are not investing in equity? And by equity, I don't just mean equity shares that you buy directly. It can be in the form of equity mutual funds. It can be an equity option within NPS. It can be an equity PMS, a ULIP with equity option. So there are a lot many different ways to participate in the equity market. Even if you don't know much about equities yourself, your professional fund managers handling the money for you. But in spite of all of that, why is that only about 7% of Indians till date have invested in equity, whether directly or through mutual funds? Even if it's giving significantly higher returns, especially on a post-tax basis, why is it not more popular than fixed deposits, gold, real estate, which are the traditional favorites of Indians? A lot of people are afraid of it. A lot of people even think it's gambling. Now, the reason is, one is an investment return, second is the investor return. So just because an asset class or an investment is giving X return does not mean the investor always gets that return. And the reason for the difference is the behavior of the investor. So knowing where to invest is not enough. How to be a good investor is also of paramount importance. That knowledge is very, very important. And typically, the best way to do that is to have a sounding board with a professional, so that when anytime you're making a decision to invest or to take money out, they are able to guide you correctly and you don't make any faulty decisions. It is only the mistakes by the investor which result in a significantly lower return or even negative return, which means losses in an investor portfolio, while the investment has actually given a positive return to people who invested correctly. So if you need to diagnose a patient, would you use a syringe or a stethoscope? Right? Now, unfortunately, most people do the opposite when it comes to their investments. They use the wrong tools in the wrong situations. While debt fixed income is great for short term, if you need the money that you have saved today, 6 months or 1 year or 2 years down the line, it makes sense to keep it in fixed income where market volatility does not affect it, and you know exactly what amount of money you'll get when you need it. Equity, on the other hand, is extremely unpredictable in the short term, but has great potential for inflation beating, tax efficient returns in the long term. And the probability of you making a positive return keeps going up as the longer the period you're investing for. But what do most people do? They end up trading in equity in the very short term, sometimes even within the day they buy and sell. But they invest in LIC and PPF and bank FDs and other fixed income options for 20, 30, 40 years. So when you're using the wrong tool for the requirement, obviously the results are not going to be what you expect. So you have to make sure that you're matching the right tool with the right requirement. The other is emotional interference. Whether it's me, you, and I've also fallen prey to this, a lot of times as an investor over the last 30 years, we end up buying things out of greed when we see everybody else has made returns in that, whether it's buying Nifty futures or buying cryptocurrency or gold or real estate. Most investors, retail investors, come into the market when that asset class has already given a very, very good return over the last 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and is now extremely expensive. And it's a great time to sell. That's when most people come in to buy, because of the greed and because of FOMO, fear of missing out, that everybody's making so much return. I'm the only one who's missing out. So now let me invest. And so you're investing at the top of the cycle when it's the absolute most risky and least rewarding time to invest. And therefore, what you see immediately after that is within a short span, you see a major fall in that asset class. And so you end up seeing a loss in your returns in your portfolio. And then what happens? You hold on because you don't want to book a loss. We all have a loss aversion. We don't want to, accept that I've made a wrong decision. We don't want to cut our losses. We just want to wait. And then ultimately, when the loss becomes too much to bear at the bottom of the market, when it's time to invest more because the prices are low, what do? We end up selling. And as we keep continuing this across asset classes, what happens? All our savings are gone. And then we blame the asset class, we blame the investment, whereas the fault is not with the investment, the fault is with our own behavior. So if we correct this behavior and we invest at the right time and we divest at the right time, then we can actually make the best of these investments instead of having losses. Now, you're just like having a balanced meal, your investment portfolio should also be a balanced portfolio, which has fixed income instruments for short-term needs, growth assets for long-term needs, liquid assets for any contingencies, right? So just like you need vitamins, proteins, carbohydrates, everything, you also need all these different components in your portfolio in the right proportions. And if you're doing that, then you will have a healthy financial life and not just a mismatch of all the ingredients. So far we've discussed why you need to plan, how you can plan, which are the different asset classes available and instruments available, and how to plan. Something that has come up as a very viable option only in the last few years is mutual fund SIPs. Of course, everybody, I think most people here would know SIPs. But when you're talking about retirement, a very useful tool to combine with that is SWP, which is the opposite of SIP. In SIP, you invest regularly. In SWP, which stands for Systematic Withdrawal Plan, you generate a regular cash flow so that the money is coming out of your investments to support your expenses on a regular basis. So how does this work? in your accumulation phase, while you're still earning and accumulating for the future, you invest through SIPs so that every month or every week or every quarter, depending on your cash flows, how they are, you can create your SIP portfolio, and every month you're regularly investing. So one, it brings in the discipline of investing every month. Ideally, you do it at the beginning of the month so that investment happens first for your future, and then the remaining money is spent for your regular expenses. So that makes it very easy to stay disciplined. Second, if equity funds or balance funds are part of your portfolio, then there is going to be volatility in the portfolio in the short term. But if you're investing every month, if you're investing regularly for years, you'll see that because you're investing a fixed amount, every time the market is up and it's more expensive, you are buying fewer units. When the market is cheap and it's gone down, you are buying more units with the same amount. So you get the benefit of rupee cost averaging. And over a period of 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, all the volatility gets averaged out, and you end up getting the benefit of the returns from the market because you've been buying at every level. Third, the magic of compounding. Now we saw a demon of compounding when we looked at our inflation chart. How a 10 lakh figure of annual expenses can become a 3 crore or 5 crore figure in a few decades, right? Now, the only way to counter that is to have your investment portfolio also compounding over a similar period where you don't disturb the portfolio and keep the amount invested for a long period of time. You don't dip into it. And the return that the portfolio is generating is higher than the rate of inflation. Even if it is higher by just 1% over inflation, then because of the magic of compounding over 2, 3, 4 decades, the difference in the amount that you collect for your retirement will be so much higher that you will no longer have to worry about inflation and taxes and contingencies, and you will have sufficient corpus to take care of any length of retirement, be it 10, 20, 30 years of retired life. It will be enough to take care of all those expenses, provided you've given your retirement enough time. And that is why investing 1 lakh 5 years from now is not as good as investing 50,000 today. The earlier you start, the more time you're giving your money to work the magic of compounding. So it's okay if it's a small amount, but the moment you start earning from the very first month, you must start investing, whether it's 1,000 rupees of SIP or 1 lakh, doesn't matter. Whatever your earning level, whatever your savings level, start as early as possible, because your earnings from your savings from first decade of your earning will give you a much higher figure than the big earning that you have in the last decade of your earning, because it will have so much time to keep compounding, multiplying. Now, based on the current taxation, if you're investing in funds which qualify for Indian equity categorization, even if they are balanced funds which are comprising of debt and equity both combined, the tax is very, very low. It's fixed at 10% for long-term investments. So even if you are in 20%, 30% tax bracket, you end up capping your tax at only 10%. So it becomes very tax efficient way of accumulating your corpus, so that apart from inflation, taxes don't eat away into your savings and returns. Now, having accumulated the funding, when it's time to start enjoying the corpus, and you don't no longer want to depend on your earnings, but you want to start generating a cash flow, the exact opposite happens. Instead of systematic investment, you have systematic withdrawal. So, and you can set it up. It's extremely flexible. So you can set it up whichever way you want. You can have a fixed amount coming to you every month, every week, every quarter, every year. So depending on your cash flow requirements, you can decide how you want the cash flows to happen, how much cash flow you want to happen. Also, depending on your expenses, you can keep increasing the figure. So as your expenses keep increasing, you can keep increasing every year. So in year one, let's say you're getting 100 rupees every month. In year two, you can increase it to 105, year three, 110, year four, it can be 117. So as your inflation keeps going up and as your expenses keep going up, you can keep increasing the withdrawal amount, the amount that is coming to you in terms of your cash flows on a monthly basis, and in a very free manner, keep getting the amount that you exactly need. Again, even at the time of withdrawal, when you're getting this cash flow, it remains a very tax efficient income distribution option, because while what you're taking out is from the return generated from your corpus, from accounting perspective, technically, it is accounted, a large portion of what you withdraw is accounted for as capital gains. So you're withdrawing the amount of capital that you've invested and not the returns. Now, this is purely from accounting term. So even if you generated 5 rupees of income and you're withdrawing only 2 rupees, you are still accounting for it as capital. To make it simple, basically, instead of paying 20, 30%, 40% based on your your tax bracket, you can limit your withdrawals to the tax on your withdrawals to only 10%. Or effectively, it can be even lower than that. And last but not the least, if you've created the right portfolio, even after the withdrawals, you're meeting inflation, and therefore you have a chance to create an inflation-proof retirement portfolio. Now, to give you an example before I end, okay. So this is an illustration, and this is by no means something which is fixed or guaranteed. This is just for understanding sake. Okay. So this is this Mitra SIP is by SBI Mutual Fund. I'm not recommending SBI Mutual Fund per se. This is just an example. This can be done with any fund from any fund house. The idea is to understand the concept here. So what you do is, let's say you're investing 50,000 every year. Now, depending on how many years you have left till your desired retirement age, if you started late, you might have, let's say, 8 years. Somebody who's young and has 30 years, then you might have a long period through for which you invest, and you can keep investing. So let's say both the 8-year person and the 30-year person are both investing 50,000 per month through an SIP. Now, at the time of retirement, what is the amount that you can withdraw every month? If you invested for 8 years, you can withdraw the same amount out, 50,000 every year, every month, right? So to take care of your expenses, and you can continue doing this for 25 years. Okay. And even at the end of that, you will leave about 6.5 lakhs as legacy for sudden expenses, or for as a legacy for your inheritors, for your family. Now, this is a short period. Now, let's look at someone who has a long period of earning ahead of them. They invest for 30 years. Okay. Obviously, inflation will mean their expenses would have also multiplied over those 30 years. But so in that case, we have also taken a significantly higher withdrawal rate. So we are saying in their retirement, they will withdraw 6 lakhs. Okay, they've invested 50,000 a month. After 30 years, they will withdraw 6 lakhs a month. Okay. Now they will be able to withdraw 18 crores over the next 25 years and still live behind 233 crores. Now, these figures might seem mind-boggling. Once again, I will draw your attention to the fact that if you look back 30 years ago or 25 years ago, whether at the cost of things or even at the value of things. If you look at the cost of gold, if you look at Sensex 30 years ago, if you look at some property, if it's costing 5 crore today, it may be a few lakhs 30 years ago, right? So this compounding does happen, even if these figures look fantastic. I assure you, they are extremely realistic. Okay, so uh, Right. So that is it from my side in terms of the information that I wanted to share with you. And uh, now we are open to whatever questions that you may have.
Hello, good evening, Anand Doctor. Myself, Dr. Tarun. I just want to know how much to allocate to different types of investment and saving plans, whether depending on annual income. How to decide how much we should invest in FDs, SIPs, equity, etc., etc.
Right. Just 1 second. Can the host make it so that I can see the person who's talking in the full window?
Yes, I have asked myself, Dr. Tarun. Uh,
Just give me 1 second.
You can stop sharing, doctor.
That's right. I forgot
You
that.
can stop sharing.
Right. I stop video, stop share.
Yes.
Yes, now I can. Yeah. Okay. Right. Hello, Dr. Tarun. So, yeah. So your question was how to allocate across different investment avenues, correct?
yes,
Right. So there are two, three things, and that actually brings me to a point which I failed to cover in the presentation, especially for people who are on the younger side, in their 30s, 40s, especially 50s. What ends up happening is, before even going to which investment option, which investment goal are you investing for? Okay, so one is we talked about retirement, but if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, then you also have a lot of other requirements for which you need to save and invest, and then you end up
surely.
spending for achieving those goals. So it could be a house purchase, it could be the full purchase amount or the down payment, in which case you need to also allocate a part of your income for the EMIs. It could be for a car, it could be for foreign travel, but the most important goal, where most Indians end up spending the most, apart from real estate, is on the children. Okay, so whether it's children, so earlier we used to say children's higher education and wedding. Now it is expanded a lot because the expenses has start right from preschool now. Okay,
Yeah,
so it used to be a few thousands. Now you can have lakhs of rupees going even at
lakhs.
preschool level. And if you are in a IB or IGCSE board or even a very good ICSE school, the regular annual school fees can be in lakhs. We've seen fees ranging from 50,000 to 5 lakhs, sometimes even 6, 7 lakhs in some of the very posh schools. So these become annual expenses and not some faraway expenses, but right from the time you have
Yes.
children, right? So if you're early enough that you don't even have children yet, then you need to start planning for those goals as well. And Indian parents, we have this ethos, this culture that we do anything and everything for our children. And so, education, even after education, we say, okay, you want to go abroad for further education. Okay, we'll even help you with that. Or let's say somebody wants to set up a business. Okay, we'll give you startup capital. You want a weddish living, we'll spend on that. It's only after the wedding that even if the child is earning, I mean, the child is grown up, they're earning on their own, still the parents will contribute to the wedding expense and give them that lavish wedding that they want.
Yes.
Right? Now, what ends up happening is, while you have the cash flow today to do all this, what you're doing is taking away cash flow which you need in your retirement. The idea is to have a fixed amount going to your retirement goal and not touch that, because if you keep taking all the money away from your short-term goals, there is nothing which is in your retirement kitty which is compounding over the next 20, 30, 40 years, and therefore generating that large corpus which you will need when you're in your 60s and 70s, right? And at that point, no matter what you've done for your children, you don't want to go to them and say, okay, now you support me, right? So you want to make
Yes.
sure that first you separate your goals and don't put everything in just one kitty. So before differentiating investments, differentiate your goals. And every investment that you make, tag it to that goal so that you are very clear, this investment is for my child's education. This is for my child's wedding or XYZ. This is for my house purchase. And most important, even if you don't segregate all of those, segregate your retirement goal. Okay. So everything else can be flexible, but your retirement fee is a mandatory investment which you will not touch for any of your short-term requirements. You will not borrow from it and say, okay, I will, let me take that money right now and I will replenish it later because I have this expense, but then I will save some more and put it back later. That A is very difficult to do. You may underestimate the difficulty in doing that. B, even if you do it, you're taking away that good period of compounding that would have happened. Even if you replenish the amount, you're not going to be able to replenish the returns that you would have generated. And as we saw with the inflation slides, it's critical to generate those returns over that long period of time. Only then you'll have sufficient corpus in your retirement to take care of your 20, 30, 40-year long retirement. Otherwise, you will not have enough. No matter, even if you have 10 crores, which may look like a big amount today, at that time, the value of that will be less than 50 lakhs today. Right? So you'll
Got
end up using up all your corpus within 5 to 10 years of retirement, which means either you have to substantially lower your standard of living, which is extremely difficult to do at that stage in life, or you have to possibly keep earning. And that is also assuming that you're physically, mentally fit enough to be able to do that. So India, frankly, is looking at a ticking time bomb of retirement poverty. Because we are all increasing our standard of living today, but we are not saving enough for our retirement. And unlike the West, we are spending like the Westerners for that standard of living. But unlike them, we don't have a social security net. If tomorrow you are destitute in your in your retirement, the government is not going to give you minimum X amount so that you have a decent basic standard of living. You have food to eat, you have food for rent, you have a decent basic lifestyle. The Indian government is not having the resources to give you that kind of social security. So you have to make sure that you are securing your retirement, come what may. This is something that you don't touch, and you make sure that it's compounding over the next 2, 3, 4 decades till the time you're earning. Okay. Now coming back to stage 2, which is your question, if you're in saving and investing, where do you invest? Of course, it depends. The answer is different for everyone. It depends on your risk appetite, your knowledge and understanding of investments. So if I tell you, Dr. Tarun, that let's say if you look at my portfolio, it's typically 90 to 100% in equities. Okay. But then I've been in equity since I was a teenager. On my 18th birthday, I got stocks as gift from my grandmother. So that has been the culture in our family, right? That in fact, being a part of a business family, we've seen very good times and very, very bad times. And in those bad times, people say we break our FDs. We sold shares of Reliance. That was our go-to thing, a go-to asset of a bad time. Okay. So now equate that to somebody who's, let's say, in their 60s or 70s and have only done fixed deposits their entire life. If I tell them to now suddenly look at equity, every time the market falls by even 100 points and their portfolio goes down by 0.1%, they will have the BP going up, right? So it depends. If you're younger, it's great because you have a lot more time to learn, experiment, and kind of get familiar with the market cycles. So with smaller amounts of your savings, when you're not experimenting with your entire life savings, right? So look at it in terms of period. Ideally, if you have the appetite to digest the ups and downs in the market, longer the period, higher the allocation to equity, shorter the period. So if you need money, let's say for a down payment 2 years down the line for buying a house, make sure that money is in fixed income. Don't try to generate a higher return. Okay. You might get a basic return, which after inflation may be lower than inflation after taxes. Okay. So you get 6, 7%, take out inflation, you end up getting, let's say 0% or minus 1% return in terms of purchasing power. But you have that fixed requirement at the end of 2 years, you will have that fixed amount available to you at that time. If the market is down at that time, you'll have a very bad situation where either you postpone your goal because market is bad and you should not exit at this time. You should wait till the market comes back up, or you book a loss and take the money out. Both of which are very, very bad options. You don't want to put yourself in that position where you have to make a bad choice. So anything which is 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, don't touch equity at all. Make it fixed income, very stable, safe assets. Okay. But when it comes to long term, So when you're talking about something which is 7 years away, 5 years away, then you can have a portion of equity and a portion of fixed income. So you can have either hybrid funds that you can invest in, which invest in both, or you can yourself segregate and say, okay, this much I'm putting in fixed income and this much I'm putting in equity. And then, of course, one important thing is that you review everything every year, right? So you don't just do it and forget it. You have a review with a professional every year so that you make sure that as things change in your life and as you go closer to your goals, you make the required changes to make sure that that amount is available securely when you need that. Now, talking about, let's say, something which is very far away. Let's say you have a child's higher education or wedding that you want to plan, or your retirement that you want to plan, which is goals which are at least 10, 15 years away, 20, 30 years away. Now, this is where, if you have the appetite for it, you can even go 100% equity. Because whatever volatility happens, market will go up, go down, go up, go down, and that's part of markets. It's like a heartbeat, right? If it stops going up and down, the heart has stopped, the person is dead, right? So just like a heartbeat, the ups and downs in the market are inevitable. But in a growing economy, there is a very, very good probability that as long as the economy is growing well, markets will reflect that. And you will have a chance to average out that volatility because you're investing regularly. And at the end of the period, you will have the benefit of substantial amount of compounding. Compounding can happen even in a fixed deposit, but at a significantly lower rate. So when you have the appetite for volatility and the capacity for volatility, because you are looking at a very long period, and that short-term up and down is not going to actually affect your day-to-day life, right? So that is when you can take the volatility risk and look at investing 60, 70%, 80%, or even 100% in equity. And by equity, again, I don't mean directly equity shares, because as busy professionals, typically you will not have the time necessarily to, look at, because it requires a lot of study to invest in direct equity. And you have to be on top of your toes to make sure that you're exiting at the right time. Entry is very easy, but if you don't exit the stocks at the right time, the value of some of those stocks can become a fraction or even zero, and it may not recover. Your overall portfolio that will not happen. Your market, that will not happen. Market will recover, but those individual stocks may not recover at all. The company may go down to zero. Okay, so unless you have the time, inclination, and learning, don't go heavy on direct equities. But you have equity mutual funds, hybrid mutual funds, NPS. These are the options where professional fund managers are managing your money. Their only task is to do that day in, day out with their entire professional teams. They are extremely well regulated by SEBI. So your money is relatively much safer in those options, and you can focus on your career where you do the primary wealth creation of earning money and then saving money, and then the secondary wealth creation is done by the professionals. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Manogaran.
Hi, good evening.
Will, you are saying written will. I am only one son. Is it necessary to write a will for a fixed house?
Yes, sir. If you have any assets, especially if you have a house or any other real estate asset, then I will strongly recommend that you write a will. It can be a very simple thing. It doesn't have to be a very complicated process. Okay, the basic components of a will are very simple. Saying, I, out of my love and affection, I'm writing this will and I'm gifting this. So if you have only one son, sir, may I ask, do you have a spouse currently?
No.
Okay, so if you want everything to go to your son, then very simply you can say that all my assets, including you describe your property. So this property, I have this XYZ property. I want it to go to my son after my death. And you can also say all my other assets also to go to my son. It can be on a simple piece of paper. It does not have to be a stamp paper. It does not have to be notarized. It can be typed. It can even be handwritten. Okay, all of that is valid. So you may use the services of a lawyer or a professional like me, or you can even write it yourself. To write the will, all you have to do is make sure that you are signing it in front of two witnesses, and those two witnesses are signing in front of you. Additionally, as a prudential norm, I would also suggest that you get a fitness certificate from one of your doctor colleagues on the date of the will, so that nobody can dispute saying that you may not have been of sane health and sane mind. So that is also taken care of. Witnesses ideally maybe 10-20 years younger than you, so that when the will, if and when the will gets called for question, those people are still alive. So these are the basic things you look at. And so because see, there are within the family also unexpected things have happened, but also somebody who's known, not even in your family. So tomorrow someone there, so there are people who do this professionally, illegal profession, okay? They'll come to know that XYZ property, the owner is no more there because of ads in the paper that you put after the person is no more, right? And they will just come and claim that I'm an illegitimate son of XYZ. They will just take possession. And then they know they are 100% wrong. Eventually, in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, they will lose the court battle and you will win. Your son will win. Okay. But in the meantime, they've taken possession. He is sitting outside. Then the legal repercussions are there. They are not able to live a peaceful life and just enjoy the possession of the property. And basically, it is nuisance value. You might settle out of court, or you end up spending on court fees and lawyers. Utter nuisance, legally you will defeat them. But to prevent any of these things happening, and to make sure that legally you are extremely clear, it is definitely recommended that you have a will. Uh, Even if you go to a lawyer, it is not an expensive thing, or a professional like me, we charge something like just 5,000. Even that's not required, you can do it on your own. Okay, but definitely you should write a will, doctor, and also make sure that a copy of the will is with your beneficiary of the will. Okay, so that they know what is happening. And apart from the property, also you should make a proper list of all your assets, so that when you're not there, they have a clear idea of what are the assets they need to look at, which banks they need to look at, which brokers they need to look at, where do they need to go. Because we handle a lot of cases where the primary breadwinner of the family is suddenly no more in an accident or something, and that person may know everything in their head, but the family doesn't know. Now, and then there is a case from 2009. Even today, we are finding new assets. Okay, after 15 years. So we don't want that situation. So to make sure that everything is clearly listed, so that the family has an idea and they can easily access those assets.
Thank you, sir. Because 2 years back, I consulted a lawyer. He told that you are writing a will.
મને આપજી પછી
Somebody is speaking in the background. I couldn't hear you, sir. Doctor, can you repeat? Dr. Manoharan, can you repeat what you said?
Consulted a lawyer,
Contacted a lawyer. Okay.
but he says
હા બેટા હા ઓકે જરાય ઢીલા નહીં પડવાનું બહેન ભાભી પછી કૃપાબેન બધા જ છે નીલફુવા સનમ ને બધા
Bharat Shah needs to...
લેમિકુવા ને બધા જ છે હો બકા હા બેટા હેલો એમાં ઢીલા કેમ પડવાનું બેટા
Can you
ઢીલા ના પડવાનું બેટા
everyone and then unmute whoever wants to ask a question?
તારે તો ઉપરથી કહું છે પપ્પા કરો તમે મમ્મી કરો તમે એમ તું આવી મજબૂત છોકરી આવું બોલે મને નવાઈ લાગી અને અમે તો પાલિતાણા જ છીએ વચ્ચે યાદ આવે તો એક દાડા રજા લઈને આવી જવાનું સ્કેલ મૂકીને રાત્રે ને કોણ સવારે ત્યાં પાલિતાણા હા બેટા એવા ઢીલા ના પડવાનું બેટા સજ્જે ઢીલા ના પડવાનું હોય બેટા એમ ખરું અને ભાઈને ભાભીને બધા તને ફોન કરશો હા બધા તને ફોન કરશે જ કૃપાએ કે હું બી કરીશ અને બધાની સાથે વાત ખાલી પ્રશ્ન એ થાય છે કે તારે અમુક ટાઈમે ફોન ના થાય ને એટલો જ પ્રશ્ન થાય છે બાકી તો બધા તારે કરવાનું ભાઈને ભાભીને ભલા બેટા અમારે તે મોબાઈલ ના રખાય સમજી લો હા બરાબર બેટા નાસ્તો બધો બધે ઓકે મળી ગયો પેલા થેપલા પહેલા વાપરવા પડતો તારે બરાબર હા સારું અને પછી મમ્મી સાથે વન કરશે જ્યારે તને ટાઈમ હજી મમ્મી વાત થશે અડધો કલાક
હેલો બોલો બોલો
Hello. Can the host mute everyone?
Yeah, I just spoke to the host on the phone. They're trying to do that. I think in a minute they'll do it. Okay, so we were able to do that. Now, whoever wants to ask a question, if they can just do the hand raise or put in the chat, and then I can try to. Okay, so Dr. Sajjan has asked, witness for the will should not be a relative. So it can be a relative, but it should not be the beneficiary. Okay, so if you are making your spouse or your son or your daughter as the beneficiary who will receive the assets, then that person should not be the witness. The witness should be somebody else. Otherwise, someone may raise the point that this is a fake witness and the document has been created by the beneficiary, putting himself as the witness after the person is no more, and it's a fake will. So the beneficiary should not be a witness. Also, there is one more person which is part of a will, that is an executor. So who has the right to execute the will directly or by taking help of lawyers. Now, this executor can be the same as beneficiary, or it can be a professional, it can be a combination of the both, it can be a friend, it can be anybody who you trust will be willing and capable to do the task of executing the will to help the beneficiary. So it can typically we make the beneficiary themselves as at least one of the executors, and then maybe one friend or it could be a professional who could help. Should will be probated, Dr. Maheshwari? Will ideally, if the succession planning has been done well, estate planning has been done well, and there is no dispute in the family, then all the nominations, joint holdings are in place, then ideally planning should be such that will should be in place as a backup, but need not be used actually by the beneficiary. But if some institution is asking for it, or if there is a dispute in the family, then definitely to prove that it is a valid will, it will have to be probated. Typically, it takes up to 12 months. In a clear case, if there is a dispute, it can last longer in the court. But if it's a proper valid will, it can be proven in the court of law, and then it can be executed accordingly. If you want to be even more sure, then you can also get the will registered, just like any property documents get registered. The will can be registered, and then that makes it even more clear proof that it's a valid will and not fabricated by somebody. But even if it is not registered, as long as the basic requirements are met, it is a valid will, and it is the last will. If there are multiple wills, it is the last dated will which is a valid will. Even if there is a registered will made in, let's say, 2020, but if then there was a valid will made in 2023 which was not registered, that can still be valid and superior to the earlier registered will. So the date of the will is also very important.
Thank you, sir. But I heard that in the tier 4 cities like Chennai, the will should be probated. It happened in case of my father. He had a proper will, but when the lawyer told that it has to be probated in Chennai or in some cities, it has to be probated. Is it so?
So basically we have the remnants of the British system where we had 4 presidencies. So Mumbai, Madras, Calcutta, and so these are the main presidencies where you have similar rules. And then you have smaller towns where a different set of rules apply. So airship may be required, whereas in the presidencies, succession certificate is required. But that is for financial assets. For real estate, you will need a
Real estate.
will or a letter of administration. So depending on the case, it may be different. But again, now this comes into play when the nominations are not or joint holdings are not proving sufficient. Okay, so now if based on the nomination, society is anyway transferring the asset to the beneficiary, and there is no dispute by any other beneficiary, okay, or a relative, then practically, I'm not saying technically, I'm saying practically, you may not need to get the will probated because whatever assets have to be transferred are anyway transferred.
Okay.
You may still, just as a very prudential thing, still go for a probate for any future contingencies. But practically, the assets, if the joint holdings and nominations are properly in place, whether it's fixed deposit, property, any other asset, okay, if those things are properly taken care of, then in practical sense, you may not need the probated will to get the assets transferred.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
But it's always good to have it as a backup. So if you need it, you have it. Also, for the younger generation, if you have children, apart from your assets, you also need the will to be there in place to make sure that you're specifying who will take custody of your children. Otherwise, it will be up to the courts. And if you're Hindu, as per Hindu law or other, depending on different religion, different laws will apply. So it will all be based on the laws of the land and the court's decisions. So ideally, just like your assets, you should have a clear discussion with your family members. Also, in the sense of, okay, tomorrow, if me and my wife are both no longer there, we die in a car crash, who is going to take care of my daughter? And that person who volunteers, their name should be used, and that should be documented. That that my assets will also go, be used. They will be the guardian for my daughter, and they will also be the guardian who will be in charge of those assets, so they can use those assets to take care of the upbringing of my daughter. Okay, so apart from the senior citizens, this is very, very, very applicable for younger people who have children. So even if you are older, you can ask your children to look at this aspect, right? Because while we hope for and plan for long lives, death can strike at any moment. There are cases where we see where people in their 80s are alive and their children are no more, and they are taking care of their grandchildren, right? So these things should be very clearly documented, whether you're a grandparent or a parent. In fact, most lawyers also don't look at this aspect. They only look at the assets. So this is something you will have to talk about from your side to make sure that it's documented. Okay, looking at the chat. Okay. I think how to make a will in house or in court. I think this we have answered. Then which is the best option, direct plan or regular, grow, Kuvera, how safe they are. Okay, so direct plan is like self-medication. Okay, so if you know what you're doing, as a doctor, there are certain ailments which you might be able to medicate yourself. For others, you may still go to a colleague of yours because it's their specialty and take their advice, right? So direct plans are for people who know exactly what they're doing. They have sufficient knowledge and the right temperament. Then it's like self-medication. If you're very sure of knowing what you're doing, then you can go for direct plans. Otherwise, you need to go to a professional where it will be a regular plan. Of course, there'll be a commission going to the professional, which will slightly reduce your return. But in the long run, making sure that you're in the right direction is more important than how fast you are running. If you're running fast in the wrong direction, then anyway, you'll end up in a bad place. So the professional will make sure that you're going in the right direction, even if it's slightly slower speed, because that professional obviously needs to get paid. and your return goes down by 0.5%, 1%, but as long as your overall portfolio is in the right direction, eventually you will end up in a better place. But if you have studied finance very well, and if you know, you have a background here and you know the industry very well, you know how to invest very well, then if you're confident, then yes, go for direct plans on your own. Platforms, there are several. I cannot recommend any, but ultimately your investments are not with the platform. The platform is just a via media. So just like a chemist shop, ultimately the manufacturer of the medicine is more important than which chemist shop you buy it from. So whether it's Growth or Covera or any agent or advisor, ultimately if the fund house and the fund are doing okay, then you'll be fine. Next question is SBI Securities app. Is it okay? So there are lots of apps, and typically apps on their own will have their features. They may also have certain issues from time to time, but on the whole, if you're going with a good institution, the app will be taken care of. You also need to make sure that when you're using any of the apps or websites, or whether it's for banking or investments, you need to make sure that you understand basics of cyber security, so that you are not going to the wrong website or the wrong app and falling prey to somebody's malpractice, somebody's fleecing you, somebody putting the wrong web page and you ending up giving money to some fraud. Okay, but once those basics are in place, I think it does not matter too much which one you're going for in terms of technology. In terms of a professional, it is very important that if you're going to a professional, make sure that that professional A has time for you, B is looking at your long-term financial picture and not trying to maximize your return in 1 year or 1 month, or trying to double your money quickly, because then they'll be taking inordinate risk, and very likely you'll lose money. So go to somebody who is not promising very high returns in the short term, but trying to help you with achieving your goals in the long term. While any risk that is taken is a calculated risk and not blind risk in the greed to quickly increase your returns and double your money. And more than just the getting the basic direction right, the professionals will really help when there is a big question in your life. So whether it's a death in the family or some financial mishap that has happened, or suddenly some liabilities come on you, or there is any issue, whether it is with the investments or in your life, which affects your finances, because finances are linked to everything in your life. So when there are major questions in your life, that is when you really feel the difference of having a professional who understands your case very well versus using just an app and saving some money. So technology is for convenience. It cannot replace a professional. Just like I cannot go to Google and just self-medicate. Similarly, you need to make sure that you have a professional to go to when something is increasing your blood pressure, there is a bad situation, and you really want to hear a professional person, a human being, telling you either that it's okay, you don't need to worry about it, or these are the 1, 2, 3 actions that you need to take, and then things will be fine. So at that point, you want somebody that you're in any regular course of life, anyway, you are familiar with, they are familiar with you. And this will happen once in a few years. It will not happen every time. But when that happens, that person already knows you and already knows your case in depth. So then that person is able to help you in the right way. And that one day is more important than whatever XYZ 2-3% higher return, lower return you've generated in those 5 years. Because that will save you from making a major mistake and wiping out savings of 5-10 years. Next question. If enough corpus is present, still is it must to have term plan and health insurance? Okay, so term insurance is necessary, A, if you have financial dependence. So if there is a young person whose parents are already having sufficient retirement corpus, he is not married, or the wife is also earning as much as him or more than him, they don't have any liabilities, no loans on them, then they don't need any life insurance at all. now if you have a financially dependent spouse, or the spouse may be earning today, but tomorrow with children, they may stop earning. They may prioritize home life and children. Or if you have home loans, car loans, or any other liabilities, then to cover these liabilities, you need to have term life insurance. Again, at the end of the or the later stage of life, when you've generated enough corpus, where your financial dependence can be taken care of purely from your corpus, then you don't need life insurance. So a lot of people try to buy health, term insurance, life insurance till age of 65, 70, 80, 90. Nowadays, there are policies available which are even till 100. According to me, that's a total waste of money. You end up paying a lot of higher premiums. They try to make it like a lottery ticket. Someday I will die and therefore my family will get the money. For that, I'll pay higher premiums today. But if the family does not need the money, you're already generated enough corpus by that age, right? You will not have, your children will have grown up, they are dependent on themselves, they are independent. If there is enough corpus you've generated for your spouse, if they are dependent on you. So you don't need life insurance after that. So typically, I suggest life insurance only up to the age of 60, 65, maximum 70, not beyond that. In fact, and I don't mean to scare you, this would happen in a very rare case. But if you've seen, those crime scene kind of TV shows, or if you read in the news, you're creating basically a moral hazard where you're more valuable dead than alive. You don't want to create that situation. So you already have the assets in place. There is no dependent, but you buy insurance just as a lottery ticket that tomorrow if I die, my nominee will get this money. In a rare case, that might actually prompt a person to wish that it's better that you die rather than you live. So you don't want to create that situation. It's very important to buy term life insurance when it is required and for the right amount. Most people are underinsured, so get sufficient insurance, but get it only for the period for which it is required, not beyond that. Okay. What about NPS? Okay, so NPS is a very large topic, but in a nutshell, what I can say is NPS is like mutual funds. So there are funds within NPS, and you can choose which funds you want your money to go to. So it can be purely fixed income, it can be government securities, it can be other corporate fixed income securities, or it can be equity funds. And you can have a combination of these three also. And it's a good way to create a long-term corpus for retirement. The only issue I have with NPS is at the time of withdrawal, minimum 40% of the corpus that you've created will have to be compulsorily invested in an annuity. And annuities typically, when you buy them, are low return and fully taxable. So if you are doing well financially and in retirement, if you're in 20-30% tax bracket, then an already low return, fixed return, that's a good part of annuity, it's a fixed return, but it's a low return, and then which will not beat inflation. And then if you're in a high tax bracket, it will further reduce your return greatly if you're in 20-30% tax bracket. So that is my only issue with NPS. Otherwise, it's in many ways, it's a good option to save and accumulate your corpus. Dr. Manmohan is asking, Manoharan is asking, MF are maintained by fund manager, multi-cap fund is diversified, then direct plan of famous fund house, okay? So again, is a multi-cap fund the right option for you? For what amount and during what period of your financial life? Right, so those are the principal decisions. Okay, so whether you need let's say a roti or dal is more important than whether that roti is bajre ka roti or jowar ka roti. That is secondary. Whether it is rare or well done, that is secondary. So first is, what do you need, for what period, for what amount? And then again, it has to be reviewed. It's not a one-time decision. You may invest for 30 years, but it has to be reviewed every year. So because things keep changing in your life as well as in the financial markets, in terms of the instruments available, in terms of regulations. So, and this is where you need to have ideally a professional, or you need to develop that kind of knowledge yourself. Throw light on NPS. Okay, we've covered that. Health insurance at the age of 63. So Dr. Ravi Kumar, if you are hale and hearty, then even in 60s, now there are policies which are available. So you may not be able to get very large amounts of insurance. You may get 5 lakh, 10 lakh, 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs. You may not get beyond that if you want. But there are insurance companies which give life insurance even in 60s, even in 70s for that matter. There will be restrictions. There will be, in terms of the amount. If you have physical ailments already, then some of those may not be included in your coverage, at least for a few years. If these are major ailments, they may be excluded permanently from your policy, depending on which company's policy you're taking. Or you might have a copay in your policy where you may end up paying 20 or 30% of the bill from your pocket, and the remaining is paid by the insurance company. But if you're completely hale and hearty, then up to a certain amount, even in 63, you can get full coverage without any exclusions. Eye center. So that's the question. Like term life, is the question is also for health insurance. If enough corpus available, do we still need to buy health insurance? Okay, now things are different here. Term life is a one-time event. Health ailments can be something which are recurring in nature. So there are many instances. For example, cancer can be heart issues, or it can be different issues happening at different points of time. So let's say instead of having 50 lakhs insurance policy, you have put aside from your corpus 50 lakhs as saying, okay, I have 50 lakhs or 1 crore of health corpus, which is only to be used for my healthcare requirements. I will not use it for anything else. For others, I have kept separate corpus. And therefore, I don't need to spend money on health insurance premiums. I can save that money and just invest that money and grow that money. Now that can work if the requirement is one time. In that one time or two times, if your 50 lakhs corpus or 1 crore corpus is used, the corpus is gone. After that, what? If you have a third requirement, fourth requirement, fifth requirement, at that time, your corpus is no longer there, right? And as we saw, the inflation in medical expenses is exorbitant. In every 5 to 6 years, the cost keeps going, keeps doubling. Now, at that rate, if the cost keeps going up, and if you have multiple requirements, every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, if you keep requiring it again and again, and again, this is not just for one member of the family, it is for all members of the family. Term life is mainly for the earning member, but health insurance is something that you need because health is something that will affect everybody. For any member of the family, you will want to make sure that you spend whatever is required, but you will make sure that they get the best of healthcare, right? And for that, to be able to do that again and again and again, any corpus may fall short, right? So unless you're saying, okay, I sold my, let's say startup business and I've got 1,000 crores, and then even if I'm spending 5 crores every year on healthcare, I will still have enough money. Then it's an exceptional case. But for most people, a health insurance for every family member, right from newborn to the oldest member in the family, is definitely recommended. And a good amount of insurance while people are healthy and can get the insurance is recommended. Because the requirement can come up again and again, and any corpus with the high increase in cost may not be enough. Or you may be able to do that, but then you may sacrifice on the security for your other goals, like safe retirement for non-health expenses. Okay, newcomer, unknown about shares. Should you invest? Okay, so the one of the most celebrated and biggest wealth creating investors in share market, Mr. Warren Buffett, who at one point was the second richest person in the world, and even today is one of the richest people in the world, mainly through his long decades of investing in equity markets. So I think it's the authority when it comes to investing in equity markets. I'm a staunch follower of his investing style. So he says something very clearly: don't invest in something you don't understand. Okay, which seems like very common sense, very basic common sense thing to say, but it applies at every level. So if you don't understand stocks, don't invest in stocks. Invest in a equity mutual fund. The fund manager will do it for you because it's their job to understand that. They know it. They are dealing with it day in, day out. If you have the inclination to learn, there are people, even doctors I know, who are very, very, very well versed with equity markets because they have learned over years and decades because they find it very interesting. So just like you learned your subject in medicine, similarly, if you learn the subject of investments and within that equity markets, and again, it's not just theoretical knowledge. Practically, you have to go through those ups and downs, those cycles. Only then you will understand how it feels, because it's not an academic subject. It's something which is very closely linked to emotional interference and biases. So when you have gone through that, then you can look at investing serious money on your own into stocks. Otherwise, I would definitely recommend that you don't do that. From a learning perspective, from an experiment perspective, what money you can spend on a small trip, you can, instead of that, invest in stocks just to understand the experience and learn about it. Because market does charge a tuition fee. Without losing money, you cannot learn stock market. So you can do this with a small amount of money, just to learn, but do not expect it to be a very serious financial option where you put a large bulk of your savings there on your own when you don't really understand the market. Okay, Dr. Ravi Kumar is asking for about gold coins and easy cash market. Okay, so I don't understand what easy cash market means. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit, Dr. Ravi Kumar. Gold coins, of course, gold as an asset class, whether you invest in physical gold or through gold coins, or you invest through gold funds or gold ETFs, or of course now there is a very good option given by the government, which is sovereign gold bonds. These are all different ways in which you can own gold, and whatever makes sense to you, you can use that. The benefit of gold, especially physical gold, is in an extremely bad situation. Let's say there is a war tomorrow between India and China, and everything else is down. Banks are closed, and so I'm talking about absolute worst case scenario where nothing works. Then your physical gold can work as your currency for those few days when nothing else is working, and people may even refuse to take your currency, or you are not able to go to an ATM and withdraw cash. Okay, so in that case, go some amount of physical gold, again, not in a bank locker, but lying at your home, a very small amount of physical gold which you can easily access, can help as a currency in those extreme situations. So this may not happen in an entire lifetime, but just as a kind of an insurance, if you want to have this, you can have it. Beyond that, as a hedge to, let's say, stock markets falling or other markets falling and money being pulled out in bad situations, let's say, the crash that we saw in 2007-8, or when we saw with for a few weeks with Ukraine war, or when the Israel-Hamas war started. Whenever there is very big unexpected event happening in the world, in financial markets, people withdraw and asset class prices fall down. Of course, they recover again in a while, and today we are at all-time highs in stock markets in just a few weeks. But during those times, gold typically tends to appreciate when other asset classes depreciate. So it can prove as a hedge or a kind of an insurance as a risk mitigation strategy as a small part of the portfolio. But should it be the major part of your portfolio? Typically, you need to understand that gold also falls. There have been many periods where gold has either not generated a return higher than inflation, or it has also fallen and generated a negative return for as much as 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. Gold has actually been negative. Okay, so just like you take a long-term call with equity or real estate, you also need to take a long-term call with gold if you're making it as a part of your portfolio. And also realize that gold typically in the long term, at the most, acts as a hedge to inflation. It does not beat inflation in a meaningful way. So after beating inflation and paying taxes, do you get a real positive return? In very few periods. Most periods, over the long term, you will not get a big positive return after deducting inflation and taxes. What about SGB? So yeah, so I just said sovereign gold bonds. So that's SGB. And there are issues, I think, in December as well as February. So if you want to invest in gold, but you don't need liquidity, okay, you don't need to be able to withdraw money in between, then SGB works as a good option, because instead of paying locker charges for maintaining your physical gold, in fact, here you're actually getting paid a small amount of interest. Of course, it's all taxable, but at least something is coming out in your pocket instead of going out of your pocket. And because it's a government scheme, it's relatively safe. So yes, that is something you can consider. But make sure that you don't need liquidity, because while it is listed in the market and secondary market, you can sell it. Technically, practically, there is not much liquidity in the market, so you may not be able to sell it. Or if you sell it, you might have to sell it at a loss. So you need to be able to make sure that you are able to hold till maturity, and you don't need to, suddenly liquidate. So you need to, if you have enough liquid investments elsewhere, then you can look at SGB. Bank FD for safety reasons. Of course, like I said, if you have any, short-term requirements, if your money is needed for any goals which are coming up in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, then definitely you have to look at safer options which are not linked to equity market or even gold or any other market which can go up and down, right? So definitely not real estate. So it has to be something which is fixed in nature, also not volatile, and your capital is relatively safe, and so basically predictable in behavior, so that when you need the money, that money is available to you. Even if you don't generate a good return on it, that's fine. You can generate the return for your long-term goals, for your short-term goals, rather than generating a high return. Your focus should be to make sure that the right cash flow is available at the right time. And FD is obviously one easy way to do that. But if you're in a high tax bracket, do look at other options. There are mutual funds which can also kind of substitute fixed deposits, which are not linked to equity market in a major way. And then there are other debt or fixed income options. So do look at those things as well, apart from fixed deposits. But yes, especially for a short-term investment, there's nothing wrong with fixed deposits. But be ready for a lower return, because the percentage return is anyway low. Plus, if you're in a high tax bracket, then so much tax will also be deducted. Okay, Dr. Pravina is asking for bifurcation of expenses. So these are rules of thumb, saying, say out of 100 rupees, 30 in expenses, 30 goes in tax, 40 to be invested for long-term savings, and then how much in each category. So like you have to look at the patient and symptoms and then diagnose and then give the treatment accordingly. So this is a personal, so the subject we are dealing with is personal finance, where I say personal is this big and finance is this small. Okay, so what is your personal situation with respect to your finances? It's critical to look at that before saying what is the right percentage for you. There is just like there is no one best medicine that can cure all diseases. Similarly, there is no one rule of thumb that can be applied to everyone. So definitely you will need to consult a professional in order to make this decision. One size does not fit all. So my advice to one client can be the exact opposite of my advice to another client. So I cannot give you a simple rule of thumb. They are very popular because they are very easy to give, but in practical life, they don't really work because the requirements are very different for different people. So if you apply general rules of thumb, they don't work.
Sir, can I talk, sir? Can I ask one question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Most of the SIP, mutual fund, all these things are used, suitable for youngsters, age of 30, 40, and they can take some risks. What
Okay.
is the main advice for the age of 60, 65, like that people?
Right. So again, it depends on your overall financial situation. But if you don't have very substantial financial corpus collected, and you need to make sure that even if you don't earn a significant income going ahead, your retirement has to be secured, then you, sir, to beat inflation and taxes, you don't have a choice but to look at an asset class which is beating these things and giving a positive return over and above that. Right. So, if you have a very substantial corpus and your expenses are extremely low, and you have all the insurances, so those expenses are taken care of, then maybe you can get away with a large portion of your corpus being in fixed income, options. But and again, if you're not, in a taxable bracket, then those returns are at least coming to you fully. So then, in those rare cases, it may be practically doable. But in most cases, if you're 60, 65, what if you live till 90, 95, 100, or even 85? In 20 years, your expenses are likely to be anywhere from 5 to 8 times what they are today. Whatever your annual expenses today, what if your expenses become 8 times? Can your corpus sustain that kind of expense? Can it generate that kind of income? Or will you need to start, taking money out of your principal? And then every year your principal will keep going down, and in a few years it will become zero. So basically, you have no money left, right? So you have to look at those numbers. That calculation has to be done. What is your total corpus today across all asset classes? And you cannot count the house that you're living in, even if you own it, because there is no cash flow that is going to come unless you sell it off and use it as investment and live on rent, right? So as long as you're living in that house, it is not going to generate any income for you. So you cannot even count, even if it is 2 crores, 5 crores house, as far as your retirement corpus is concerned, it is of no use to us. Right. So, so what is your expense today? What will that expense be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? Is your corpus going to be able to generate sufficient income to meet those expenses after taxes and inflation, right? So that is the calculation that has to be done. That is the foundation of financial planning for retirement. And once that calculation is done, if the numbers say, okay, you are going to be fine, then well and good. Otherwise, to fight inflation and taxes, you will have to allocate at least some portion into equity. Yes, it is ideal if you do it at an early age so that you build up that emotional tolerance for the volatility that will happen in your portfolio because you have allocation to equity, right? Starting now, I understand making this kind of a change for the first time at this stage in life can be very challenging emotionally. I understand that. But you have to be practical. If a better medicine has to be taken for long-term health, you have to take it. Right. So my suggestion is don't decide without the proper numbers in place on either side. Get the calculations done with a professional, understand where you are, where you will be 10 years, 20 years down the line. And based on that, then you take a call. And again, it doesn't mean that suddenly you have to convert everything from fixed income to 100% equity, right? So there are a lot of options in between. There are a lot of hybrid funds which don't go down as much as the market goes down, because they invest more in equity when the market is down and it's very cheap and less likely to go down further. They take the money out of equity, put it in debt, more and more in debt as the market goes up and becomes expensive and the risk is higher. So there are a lot of options available whereby you don't need to just go. It's not a binary decision that from zero you go to 100 equity. So you can have a lot of solutions whereby you have the right balance so that everything is not very, very volatile in your portfolio. There are safe portions which will take care of your expenses, let's say over the next 5 years. So even if market goes up and down, you don't have to worry because your 5 years expenses are taken care of. But for the long-term expenses, there is a part of your portfolio which is working to generate the higher corpus so that in the next 5 years after that and the 5 years after that, when you need more and more amount every year and every month, that growth is also happening parallelly. But
Sir,
right
can
now,
you enlighten on?
but right now your immediate cash flow will not be dependent on the market link instruments.
Can you enlighten on State Bank mutual fund and its guaranteed return? One. Second,
Sir,
general.
let me stop you there. I'm sorry. But, and this is, please, everyone listen to this very carefully. There is no mutual fund that can guarantee returns. Anytime the word guarantee is used, somebody is defrauding you. As per SEBI regulations, and all funds come under SEBI, as per SEBI regulations, no fund is ever allowed to even indicate the return. Forget giving a guarantee. They cannot give an indicative return saying this much return you can expect. Approximately. They cannot even say that. Forget giving a guaranteed return. So anytime the word guaranteed is used, most likely somebody is defrauding you. So be extremely careful. Get second opinion, third opinion from a professional before investing a single rupee in any such instrument when somebody uses the word guarantee. Guarantee, fixed, these are the terms we love because we want to avoid risk. But the maximum risk comes with these terms. So be very, very, very careful. You may lose your entire principal when you go for something where somebody is saying fixed or guaranteed. Okay, sir? So please be very careful. And you had other questions. Please go ahead.
What about hybrid? I'm not able to send. What is the meaning for hybrid fund?
Okay,
investment?
sorry, it's a technical term. I should have been clear on that. So hybrid just means a mix. Okay, so it's a mixture. So just like you need, like I said, you give that picture of thali, right? So you need different nutrients. You can't be only proteins or only vitamins. So similarly, typically for most investors, it cannot be only equity or only debt. Now, so it's up to you. Either you can handle your debt or fixed income portion separately and your equity portion separately, or there are funds which do the mixture, do the balancing. So you just invest in that one fund and your investment goes into debt market also, equity market also. So you have fixed income component and you have equity component, which is volatile, and the balance is maintained. So, and there are even funds which will invest in equity, fixed income, and gold. Okay, so within mutual funds, it's a very flexible instrument. So within mutual funds, there are n number of different solutions which are possible. So depending on individual requirements, so there is no one best fund. Okay, but based on your requirements, using the ingredients, the mutual funds as ingredients, we can create whatever solution is required for you.
Thank you.
And one of the ways to do that is using hybrid funds. So instead of saying, let's put 40 rupees in debt funds, 20 rupees in arbitrage funds, and for 30 rupees, let's say in equity funds, small cap funds, large cap funds. So instead of doing all that, we may choose just one fund which is doing all of that to keep life simple and easy. And sometimes, depending on the case, it may also be more tax efficient. Okay, so basically a hybrid fund is a way to combine these different asset classes within one fund. I hope it was clear. If it's still technical, you can ask me again. Okay. Mr. Shrikant.
Any other questions, doctor, please? Otherwise, shall we wind up?
Right. Yeah, 6 o'clock. There are a couple in the chat. I'll just try to quickly address those so that nobody's left behind. There are Dr. Shrikant is asking about nominee change in case of divorce, issues which happens in case of joint venture. I mean joint. I believe you mean joint holdings in equity, stocks, etc. Right. So that's a very pertinent question, Dr. Shrikant. And yes, so when you're doing joint holdings and nominations, of course, you need to be clear in terms of these possibilities. So in terms of nominees, it's very simple. Nomination you can change at any point. So it is your right, and that is an undisputable right which nobody can challenge. Because the asset is complete, is belonging to you. Okay, so since you are the sole owner of the asset, you can change the nomination any number of times, and you can make anyone your nominee. So that is very easy. in case of joint holdings, also typically the ownership and the taxation falls on the head of the first holder. But if there is a second holder, their signature may also be required. And if there is a dispute or lack of cooperation, then joint holding can become an issue where the joint holder may try to claim that this asset should be split between the first holder and me. And whether they win or not, that the proceedings can become a hassle. And yes, so in case of divorce or any other issues or disputes, joint holdings are avoidable. What you can do, the easiest way to do it is ideally amicably, split, or especially if the both people's incomes are have been used for creating those assets, then definitely legally also they will have a good chance of claiming that. If they are primarily created out of your assets, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but based on common knowledge is what I'm saying, then you might have a stronger case of saying this is my income, and therefore, apart from whatever the court decides that you need to pay in terms of alimony, you may be able to safeguard those assets. But yes, in terms of joint holdings, the second holder's signature will be required in case you want to dispose of the assets or transfer to other names or single name. The second question is max percentage a fund manager can take from investor annually. Okay, so basically the fund manager salary is paid by the mutual fund. Is the mutual fund which basically takes the expense out of the fund. And there is something called TER, total expense ratio. This has been defined by SEBI very clearly. And also, if you search for any fund online on any web search, you will be able to see what is exactly the TER for that fund. So the TER is a combination of every fund that is deducted from that particular scheme or fund. So whether it is marketing expense, whether it is fund management expense, whether it is operational expenses like demat charges or brokerage or whatever it is, the total of all those expenses put together cannot exceed the TER which is defined by SEBI. Now the TER is different depending on the fund category. So it can be lower than 1%. It can be up to 2%, 2.5%. So depending on which fund category we are talking about, SEBI has very clearly laid down those regulations. So tomorrow a fund manager or a fund house cannot just suddenly decide to take 10%, 20% out of your investment and say these are our charges. India is one of the countries where these expenses are the lowest in the world. In fact, developed countries like US, you may have even 5% expenses being taken out, 7% taken out. In India, those expenses are very low. Extremely well-regulated industry in India. And so typically you will get, the value which is much more in excess of the expenses that are being deducted from the funds. Also, the return that you look at, what you get, is net of these expenses, right? So if you see that you've got, let's say, 10% return on your fund investment, that is after all the expenses have already been deducted. So that is the net return that you've got. And apart from the taxes that you pay individually, there is nothing else that the fund is going to charge you from that. So I hope that clarifies. Right. So I think that's, I think I've been able to address all the questions that came up. So if there's anything else, you can let me know, or we can wind up the session. I hope the session was useful to all the participants and the viewers.
Yes, sir. It's a very much useful for the participant, your presentation as well as your wonderful talk. That is really very much useful for the participants. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you. Have a good day and a good financial life. Take care.